Oh, I'm going to have to call Joyce out right now.
Where is Joyce?
I told you, Joy.
Thanks everyone for coming. On the screen, you'll see some photos rotating. Those are the photos, the high school yearbook photos of our panelists and our moderator, his first year of teaching here. We do have a couple of people that couldn't come today for illness purposes. Audrey Hazier couldn't come. I don't see Roger Orthiber and Jerry Shop couldn't come. So the stories that we collect today connect us to our past. And our past is, our present right now is connected to our past. It created Sevastopol what it is today with this beautiful school, with the academic excellence, and a community that just is interested, invested in the school, and in some places loves the school. So when we're done, if you have a memory today that you'd like to share, we'll be happy to record you, or we'll write it down. Just see me or Linda, and we'll get that done today for you. Jim Adams will be asking the panel for your thoughts on different phases of your school days. He might ask the same question as some of you. He might ask just individual questions. So tell us what you know. We've got an hour and a half is going to go by really fast. So we've got a little bell. We're going to ask you to try to keep your initial response to about 1.5 minutes. We'll ring a bell when that time is there, and then you can wrap up. So, we'll begin. Margaret Evenson graduated the class of 1948. She came to Sevastopol from Sturgeon Bay. Her nickname in the yearbook was Maggie, and the note under her photo read, "Maggie doesn't believe in variety. For her, there's only one." Maybe she'll tell us about that later. Laverne Reese, nicknamed Peachy, her motto said she's known to have her opinions and air them freely. Laverne graduated in 1955, and she attended the Farview School in West Jacksonport through 8th grade. Alvin Bernshine's nickname is Al. The motto in his book read, "Lead me not into temptation, just show me where it is." Graduated in 1958. He attended the Washington School on Ehlers Road in West Jacksonport through 8th grade. Interesting in school history is that the Farview School and Washington School are just a couple of miles apart. Marlene Larson graduated in 1956 and was named Maggie. Marlene attended the Jacksonport School on Highway 57 through 8th grade, and she has the distinction of having her father teach at Sevastopol while she was here, Emmanuel Miller. She told me she never knew he was here. I attended the Farview School in West Jacksonport through 8th grade, and we had the experience of being in the same graduating class as his nephew Gary, both graduating in 1961, and maybe he'll share that story later. Larry Shop graduated in 1966 and attended Sevastopol all 12 years. Joyce Hain graduated in 1967, and Robbie Kurtz graduated in 1967. Interesting, his motto was, "Even the best of men can't resist temptation." Robbie attended the Washington School in West Jacksonport through 2nd grade. So I will turn it over to our moderator, Jim Adams, to introduce himself and the discussion.
Thank you, Lisa. As a bit of a background, although I'm looking out there and I see a lot of faces I know, so they probably know me as well. I started here in 1971 when Carl Schultz and John Bob hired me to teach. And if we have time, maybe I'll tell a little story that goes along with that. A couple of announcements: restrooms out that back door, right across the hall from the door. And I want to mention that Sue Tong Fredrickson donated some yearbooks, Sevastopol Pioneer yearbooks, and Joe Surface has some as well that she's going to be donating. There is going to be a centennial yearbook. There's a flyer back there by the table. If you're interested in getting a yearbook, you follow the directions on here about making contact so you can get a yearbook celebrating the 100 years of Sevastopol. I'm going to start with Margaret Evenson. I'm going to have her tell a little bit of her background. Going to school here at Sevastopol and some Sevastopol stories and memories that she has. And there's one that I was reading in the Sevastopol history book. Some of you may have seen this book as well, that came out a few years ago. Margaret has a feature in there, and she talks about Cherry School. So, Margaret, I'll start with you if you want to touch on some of your memories at Sevastopol.
Okay, well, I have a lot of memories of Sevastopol because I loved it here. I would say that the 4 years that I went to high school were the best years of my life. I had lots of fun. I have participated in many things, and there was always something going on. And of course, I came here from Sturgeon Bay, and I was here for 3 years. Then my dad bought a farm for, I don't know what the reason was. He was a car mechanic, but he bought this farm. It was right across from the Cherry School, which I don't know how many of you are familiar with that, but it's on the Cherry Road that goes from Sturgeon Bay out to Reynolds. And so then I had to go to a one-room school, and I really didn't like that too well. It was a good school, and I got a good education, but it was not Sevastopol, and it was not my friends that I had here, so I had to go there. And do you want me to tell the story now?
Sure, go ahead. Well, maybe we'll come back to it here. I'm trying to look to see who has the timer, and it's going to ring the bell. So we'll come back to that Cherry School one in a minute.
All right. So my feeling about Sevastopol School is that it's always been a family school. It involved the whole family, and we all loved Sevastopol, and maybe that was because it was started in the beginning by the people themselves, the women in the women's club. They decided that they didn't like sending their kids to Sturgeon Bay to stay at somebody's house to go to high school. So they wanted a high school of our own. And so they started. Now this was right around the Depression time, 1905, I believe, something like that. And so it wasn't a very good time to decide to build a school. And the men, of course, they didn't think we needed a school. This was the women. The men, they wanted their boys to stay home and work on the farm. That was good enough for them. And so the women just kept at it, and finally we got the school. And through the years, you probably remember all the talk about merging with Gibraltar, merging with Sturgeon Bay. Well, of course, my husband happened to be on all the committees that there were when they were talking about merging, so I knew all about that. Matter of fact, they had some of their meetings right in my kitchen. But if you remember those times, you remember how we held out because we wanted our school. We didn't want Sturgeon Bay's school. As a matter of fact, one of the leaders, Sturgeon Bay, said, well, I don't care what you do, but you're not going to name it Sevastopol. Forget that. And you're not going to have hot lunch because I want my kids coming home for lunch at noon. So they had all kinds of reasons why they really didn't care for us, because I think you probably also remember that we were called the cow school in many cases, and the farm school, the cow school. And the girls, they didn't really like going with the boys from Sevastopol because they were from the cow school. So those are the kind of things that I remember, but I'm sure a lot of you remember the same things.
Well, thank you, Margaret. And I'm glad you ladies won that fight. And we had Sevastopol. Okay, the next is Laverne Reese. Laverne, if you want to give a little background and maybe one of your favorite memories of being here in Sevastopol.
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit first about my elementary education. I went to West Jackson Public School for 8 years, and I can remember starting out, first time I there. I was probably about 5, 6 years old, and went along with my neighbor, Betty Anschutz. She took me along to visit. And so then I came one more time, and the teacher said, well, you might as well go to school. You're coming here to visit, you might as well go to school. So I did. I continued on then and did my 8th grade. We walked to school every day, walked probably 1.5 miles from where I lived. And and then when school was out, we had to wash the blackboards, we had to clap erasers, all things like that, and our seats in school were in rows. I think there's some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so of course you always have somebody that likes to play a little game. And so they had roll marbles down, the seats were all connected, and they rolled marbles down. And so that, I won't say what happened, but that was quite an experience. And then we had to wash blackboards at the end of the day, and we had to clap erasers. And in the morning, when it got to be winter time, of course, they just had a furnace in the school that had a big square out on the floor, and that's where the heat came out. And we had to pump a pail of water, bring the pail of water in, and set it on the register, and then that warmed up so that when it was lunchtime, we had warm water to wash our hands with before we ate. And then before we went home at night, we had to clap the erasers and wash the blackboards. So that was kind of my experience, and it was good. We had a good time. I walked with our neighbor Betty Anschutz, and we had a lot of good times. And then going into Sevastopol, that was a whole new experience. But it all turned out to be good. I had no complaints, I guess, about anything. And so, and no, I don't know, we had, there was some times when we were told we couldn't wear jeans or slacks to school. Well, only if there was a game. If there was a game, basketball game or whatever, then we could wear jeans at the end of school. And I see I got a couple of different notes here. Nobody could bring a car to school at that time. And sometimes the bus would run at night, depending on how many people they could get together for if there was a basketball game or whatever. The bus would run at night, pick us up and bring us back home again. And we had donkey basketball. We played that almost every year. We had that. And other than that, that's what all I can talk about. Everything was pretty good. No problem. Not too many problems.
Well, thank you, Laverne. And now we'll turn it over to Al and some of your memories, and maybe if you want to touch on a little of your background here at Sevastopol.
I can do that. I can start with going 8 years to Washington School, which was district number 4 in the town of Jacksonport. We didn't have a car to go to school. You walked. 1.5 miles. We walked this summer, in the fall, in the wintertime. If it was raining, Dad might feel good and come and get you with the car if he was home. As Laverne said, we had duties to do, basically the same thing. Me being a little bit bigger than some of the kids, me and a couple other fellas, we had our duties to get the water in from the hand pump, fill the bubble with cold water, and then set a pail alongside for washing your hands and doing the same thing. Same kind of furnace with a big square in the middle of the floor, and when you were outside playing and got wet, you'd come in and stand on there to get dry and remember your feet, and then class would start. Graduated in, I think, 1954. I started here in Sevastopol in the fall of 1954. And didn't really take part in a lot of the athletic stuff. Had to be home on the farm with the chores. And some of the things I can remember that we we got in trouble for. Myself, Don Bungle was in my class, Roger Zahn, who was deceased, Kenny Van Dyce, and there might have been another one. Our band teacher always had a little MG car on the north side of the school. She parked next to the furnace room. We picked that car up and turned it so she was on the steps. I don't know how Mr. Schultz found out about it, but I kind of paid for it. You know, so that was one of the things we did, and then another thing that one of the teachers had an older car, and I don't know, one of us come up with the idea of sticking potatoes in the exhaust pipe. We did it, and we went a little ways, and potato come out. The next day we got some more potatoes, we pounded it in. We got as far as the driveway out there, and the car stopped. We started it back up, and we stepped on the gas, and blew the muffler right off the car. That one we didn't have to pay for. Mr. Schultz didn't find out about that. He had a way of finding out who did what in the school. You know, I remember it was a couple times. One time I was a game hunter when I was young, and we stayed home and go deer hunting. Paid for that too. Other than that, the classes were good. The old school was, you know, there was a lot of steps to go up and down. You go from the top to the bottom. Always had good meals at noontime here at school. Mrs. Edwin Ashwood, I think, was the cook here at that time, and she made good meals for the kids. Rode the bus every day. Didn't have a car to go to school with. Of course, after Laverne said it changed a little bit when the last years I was there, some of the kids would take a car to school. So beyond that, graduated from here, and once I got out of here, I signed up for a farm short course at University of Wisconsin, and went down there in November and graduated in March for the farm short course. That was the end of my education there.
Well, thank you for those memories. I made a note about this trouble. I didn't have that down on my list of questions, but I'm going to have to come back with some of the others here, I think. Those are some interesting stories there.
You know, it was interesting because you'd hear your name on a loudspeaker. You went to the office, and then you, uh-oh. And then the other names followed, uh-oh. How did he find out? Oh, he found out.
Yeah, the teachers and administrators have a way of doing those things. Okay, the next one is Marlene Miller Larson. Marlene, same thing, got a little background and some favorite stories of Sevastopol.
Okay, I went to Jacksonport grade school. I went there all 8 years, and I had the same teacher, Mrs. Trainer, all 8 years, and I loved her classes. She was a good teacher. Of course, the boys didn't agree with me, but I had a good time, and I think some of the things I remembered about grade school is the older kids could take the younger kids and take them in that little room in the back and listen to them read. We were helping them, and we listened to them read, and we were helping them improve their school things. We had five kids in my class, 4 girls and 1 boy. We were a 1-room school. It turned out to be 2 rooms later on. The basement was converted into a classroom also. And then from there, I went to Sevastopol School. You never got a chance to ride the bus because my dad was teaching school here, and I had to come to school with him. So, the other thing I forgot about Jacksonport, I could never take my lunch to school because at noon, I lived right down the hill from the school. I had to go home for lunch every day, and I just envied all these kids that could take their lunch to school. But really, I had it the best because I could come home. I didn't have to carry a lunch or anything. But you know, at that age, those weren't important things. It was having to carry a lunch bag, believe it or not. let me see, then back in Sevastopol. I enjoyed high school very, very much. I had a lot of good friends. Fourth period was the big study hall in school. And that was the one that I don't think too many teachers liked to monitor the study hall. But we had one teacher, a science teacher. I will never forget her. And I loved her. She was really great. She was science and math, I think. But anyway, Miss Murphy would stand at the very front of the gym. The fourth period was gym and lunch and all of that. She'd stand in the front of that room, never said a word, and pretty soon you couldn't hear you couldn't even hear a whisper in the room. People just, when she said something, she meant it, and everybody knew it. So it was really enjoyable watching that. And of course, we had school. The baseball or the football field was just behind the school, and homecoming were a big thing. And we'd always plan for this big bonfire, and they were fun, except those kids from Sturgeon Bay High School, they would come and burn down our bonfire. And I think my husband was one of them. We had a lot of class activities went on. Music, I was in the band, and our band went all over playing, so I had a lot of good times there. I think that's good. My time is up. I don't know.
We'll be getting back to you.
Okay, thank you, Marlene. Next we have Lee Bly. Same thing, Lee, a little bit of your background and Sevastopol stories.
Okay. Well, I went to Farview School. We had 6 in my 8th grade class. There was 5 boys of us and 1 girl, which was Gloria Anschutz-Bidorf. And the first year, I had Emmanuel Miller, which was Marlene's father. And I don't know, most of you can remember, we had the book with Dick, Jane, Baby Sally, Scott, and Spot, and let's see, Dog and the Cat. And also at the schoolhouse now, there's a picture of, was taken in 1953, and there was 46 students in the room. And each class had to go to the front of the room, sit on a bench, and I think I was in 3rd grade, and I'm reminded of it sometime in my life now, which is Gloria that can remind me of it. We had to do reading, and it was about a horse. And I said the horse was galloping along instead of saying galloping. And it was really kind of funny, and you can all laugh about it now because...
You got a smile out of her father. I didn't really get a big smile, but it was galloping.
Okay, that's it. In Sevastopol, out here, there's the 3 floors, like Elvin said, and first floor was with the cafeteria, music. The second, mostly the grade school, the gym. The gym had a balcony, and it was very interesting. The games were mostly basketball in there, and there was you had the 3rd floor was mostly the auditorium and the regular classroom, high school. I can't tell you about that.
Okay, well, thank you for those memories. And next we have Larry Schott, same routine here. Larry, if you can give us some background and Sevastopol memories.
Well, I started, although I did all 12 years at Sevastopol. I started first grade at 5 years old in 1954 with 17 other students, and almost all of the 17 graduated to get together 12 years later from Sevastopol, along with 40 other students that joined us from those other schools and other places. Somewhere along the line, a few students left us and made good friendships, and then they would move, or a lot of students were transferred to Sevastopol or Sturgeon Bay for that time. One of my first memories of first grade was with Carl Schultz. I did something wrong, and Carl, I just remember Carl coming up behind me with his big hand and put it on my shoulder, and he said, "You would say excuse me the next time." And I've done my manners for the rest of the time. It's just something that stuck with me for years and years after that. Now, I do think that Sevastopol, being a small school, had some opportunities that a lot of other schools never had. I thank Carl Schultz, before he passed away, for the quality of the education that we got at Sevastopol. He hired really good teachers, and when I went to University of Wisconsin after that, very, very few other students had any more extensive education than what I got at Sevastopol. It was really quality education. The other thing was all the opportunities we had to partake in other things like drama club and band, agriculture, forensics, student council, annual staff, all those things that a lot of larger schools you don't have a chance to partake in. I remember the first drama that I was in 6th grade. Mr. Gribble, the band director, put on a play, and Mike Ebert and I shared the lead. I was in the first act, and he was in the second act. And it was just a great experience that a lot of other schools, you don't have the opportunity. So I'm really glad that I went to Sevastopol rather than Sturgeon Bay or a larger school. I think the opportunities were tremendous. There's a lot of interesting stories that you can remember about school, but it's all the people and the teachers that I remember the most.
Okay, well, right on the bell. Thank you very much for those comments, and I'm going to second your thoughts about Sevastopol being such a great place. It certainly was for me and for the students and the families that I knew when I was here. Next we have Rob Kurtz. Same routine, Rob.
Okay. Well, I started out when I was 5, Washington, and walked to school uphill both ways. It's a fact. I didn't go to see it. It was great. We went for 2 years, about 28 kids in our class. We started out, it was just all, we had no bathrooms, so we had to go outside for everything. We had to carry the water in, and the teacher had to stoke up the furnaces and all that kind of stuff. So we were the first school that was consolidated with Sevastopol in the 56, 57 year. This was 57, 58, my 3rd grade. I behaved for the first 2 years, but when I got to Sevastopol, it was time to live it. But I had Mrs. Charneski for 3 years. So she was a good, keep everybody in line. I couldn't believe we went from a one-room schoolhouse to a closet.
Yeah.
I mean, the room was only half the size of the room I was in. There were 17 kids in it. So we didn't get a big room at all. It was a closet down on the first floor, right by the lunchroom. But it was really great. I mean, I couldn't believe all that playground room, and didn't have to go outside and go to the bathroom anymore. So it was fun. Now the teachers were great. I had Mr. Miller, and he was awesome. And Mr. Schultz, he helped me get through school. I wasn't really bad. He was always telling me I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing. And that's okay, I understand. But he was good. He was really, the whole school had a lot of great teachers. I mean, they're just from one end to the other. And just from one class to high school to grade school. They just always had quality teachers. And going to the store was something that I learned I had to have my sweets, and I was not going to go on the bus without them. So sneak across, and Mr. Schultz wasn't there watching, and then all of a sudden we were going to sneak back. There he was. Now what are you going to do? He didn't want to go to his office. He didn't want to get in trouble. So I walked home several times. 5 miles. So I wanted to get home before my dad got home. He was coming home from the shipyard, so I didn't have a lot of time. So I was hoping somebody picked me up and dropped me off before the bus got there, because he would always ask me, didn't want to ask me why I was walking up the driveway and I was home after my sister and brother got home. So that wasn't the best thing to do, but everybody did it, and we had a lot of fun, and nobody got hurt. But it was rules, we learned the rules when we did Sevastopol. Everybody did. It was just the way it was. I got some other stories, I don't know if I want to go into those, but I do have some pictures and stuff of some of the classmates that we had. We got some annuals here, which is really great. It was a lot of fun. I went to 4-H with Larry. I couldn't believe how many kids, you know, we got in school, we kept getting bigger and bigger. We ended up with 82 kids in our freshman class. Before they left, about 10 of them left and went to Sturgeon Bay the second year. But it was fun. It was a great school.
Okay, and that is, I think, the 22nd ballot that we're looking at. We still have 20 seconds after that, so you don't have to stop in mid-word or mid-sentence on this. Thanks, Robbie. Next one is Joyce Hain.
Yes. I was also fortunate to go through all 12 years here at Sevastopol. And I lived in Little Harbor, so we were the first ones on the bus. And at that time, everybody rode the bus. There was no cars, like they said. And some of the interesting factors are that as we went on, when I was in first grade, there were very few of us, but like Robbie said, by the time we were done, we had 80-some students in our class. And we had Mrs. Robinson was our first grade teacher. And we had always had band, and that was something that I truly enjoyed. And I got to be the director of the band when we had our concert, and that was always something that was fun. I always was big into sports, and an interesting factor is that the girls that played basketball when I was in high school, there only was one forward that could go all the way across the floor. Otherwise, everybody else had to stay behind. And I said, now if the girls, we were not equal to the boys, but they didn't think girls should overexert themselves, I guess. And I also enjoyed cheerleading. I was a cheerleader at Sevastopol from freshman until my senior year. And that was always a highlight. It just seemed like it was just something that the crowd really enjoyed, having the cheerleaders. And another interesting factor is that we had Mrs. Mullendorf, our home ec teacher, and every spring she would take us on a trip. We went to Marinette, to the Northern Air, or something of that sort, the name of it. But every year she would take us on a trip in the spring, all of the home ec class, which was, it was a time that it was with all the classes. It wasn't just the freshmen, it was freshman through senior year. So we really enjoyed that time together. Also, I guess that there were a lot of rules that you had to follow. And I said if the girls today would have to dress the way we did, I mean, you'd have to kneel on the ground, and if your dress did not, or your skirt didn't touch the floor, you went home and you had to change your clothes. And the boys had to wear a belt. That was something that was important. And so the dress codes today, it's really hard for me to see because our dress codes were so strict. And today, the students don't realize that it just makes you feel better as a person if you dress, accordingly. So I find that hard. Other than that, I really enjoyed my time here at Sevastopol, and I did get to know Mr. Schultz's office very well. And everybody that went to school with me will agree with that. But it was well worth it because it made you a better person. So.
Thank you, Joyce. And concerning the dress code, I remember when I was in high school, all the male teachers had ties, and many of them had coats and ties. So when I started here, of course I went to college in the late 60s and early 70s, so the dress code in college was quite a bit different than what I was used to in high school. But anyway, I wore a tie, and sometimes it's hard to tell the teachers from the students today when you walk into a school. So I've got a couple of questions I want to ask. How many in the audience are Sevastopol students? Okay, how many are spouses of Sevastopol students? Okay, so it probably covers just about everybody here has got a Sevastopol connection. I've got one other thing. When you look around and you see these shirts with the Pioneer Peak, and you look at our school flag and so forth, that again is one of our graduates. Audrey Off is the one who did that. We got rid of the little child Pioneer Peak that was on the floor of the old gymnasium, and we went to a more adult one. So I just wanted to mention that. And I'm sure that you people out there can think of a lot of other Sevastopol graduates who have gone on and made contributions not only to our school but also to our community.
Jim?
If they're, go ahead.
When I went to a 5-year school all 8 years, and so when we, 8th grade, when we graduated, we got to go to Green Bay, to the bakery. We got to ride on a school bus from Sevastopol, and we got a loaf of bread. And we thought we really got something. And now I have a grandson that graduated from Sturgeon Bay from the 8th grade, and they went to Washington, D.C. What a difference.
Times are changing. If anybody in the audience has something to offer, and I'm glad you added that, Laverne, we don't necessarily have to follow some real formal protocol here, so if any of you want to interject, or if somebody in the audience has a question, or if you have something that you want to add to one of the stories, please just raise your hand and I'll call on you and we'll add that to the stories. Go ahead.
Larry, I really want to comment, it's Larry, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to really comment you on Mr. Schultz's comment about making you a better person. When Mr. Schultz passed away, my son wrote an article for the newspaper. He also graduated from Sevastopol. And he said the same thing that Joyce did and Robbie did. A belt was a necessity if you were going to get somewhere in life. And the other comment was, you don't pick up after someone when somebody throws a piece of paper or something on the ground. You pick up before someone. Because when you walk down that hall in Sevastopol, or any place else, you want to have that next person have a respect for the building that you're going to. Today, my son is a general manager of a resort here in Door County. And I do thank Carl Schultz and the comments that you people are making about the man that he was and the principles that he taught. Thank you for your comments, because it makes me feel really great.
Thank you very much for that. There's another one over here. Go ahead.
Two things.
Speak up nice and loud so we can all hear it.
Okay, so 2 things. One thing I wanted to comment on the lunch. So my grandma also was a lunch lady, Cecilia Delsham, and was all just homemade, and you know, like now I look back at my kids and like it's not as homemade. Nothing against our lunch program, but it's not the same as it was. But one day we always had Spam and parsley butter potatoes, and that was like and my mom would never let me take cold lunch. And I tried to put it in my lunch box, the milk carton to throw it away. And she always just stood by and waited, and then saw it and made me go sit down. So I missed the bus because I went to St. Peter and Paul. But they let me walk back to St. Peter and Paul with my cousin Jim Ash, because he always got busted too. And so we'd go to the feed mill and we'd get whatchamacallits and Mountain Dew. And then the nuns would start calling over here looking for us. And we had the feed mill, so that was cool. But my other story is more current. My husband was in the Air Force and we lived in 6 different states. And when he retired, I wanted to go to Colorado because it was really cool there. And he said, no, we're going back to West Jacksonport, building on my dad's land. I was like, we should send the kids to Sturgeon Bay because they got so many more classes and so much. nope, we're going back to Sevastopol, and it was an awesome decision. And I have a kid that's a senior in college and a kid that's a sophomore in college, and they got everything and more that they needed. Even in the current times, like, we don't have like as much stuff. Like, Caden had a friend that came in with 3 sets of calculus and he had 1, but he had the foundation of all of us raising each other's kids, and just something that you can't explain. And that's what Dave wanted, and that's what we were missing. Sometimes people know too much, and sometimes my dad comes over too many times in a day. But it's really awesome, so thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Rob, raise your hand up to add to that.
Well, bring back to the lunch part. That's kind of cool, because Vera, she was a great cook. They were all great cooks. They were all grandmothers and mothers in the community here that had a second job, and they worked in the kitchen, and they fed, what, 700 kids maybe? I don't know, grade school all the way through. And it was packed. They were in a very small room that we had to go to. So we stood on the line and waited for people to come out. You had about 15 minutes to get your food down, and that was it. And you ate it all. There was no such thing. It was back, you just got done with what, World War II and some rough times. So families didn't throw food away. That was not acceptable. But you hid it. And you had to figure out a way, because there was nothing worse than eating and having dessert, and it was grapefruit with no sugar. And even the cooks would hide some of that from the head cook so they didn't get caught getting rid of that grapefruit in their cup. But every cup was quite opposite, walk around making sure everybody's eating their grapefruit because it was balanced. You know, it's okay, there's none there. So then they get up the thing and dump it out, and they take the cup out. Yep, okay, we got caught, so whatever. I don't know what happened, I guess. It was just, yeah, we had to sit down and eat some grapefruit. I don't know, but it was great food, and they just did a fantastic job, because it was all basically, like Jenny said, homemade. They cooked it from scratch. I mean, there wasn't anything that was free, and we got free milk anytime we wanted, and there's cold refrigerated containers. You know, after sports or anything, it was always open in the hallway, and nobody ever said a word. But we didn't have anything. We had no sodas or anything. We had apples. Just an apple machine. That was everybody's got to go for an apple. Mr. Schultz was not going to let anybody eat junk food. Here's the way where the teachers had to deal with somebody on sugar high and then sugar low. So it was awesome the way they had it set up here. Everybody was you know, took care of everybody else.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Rob. Do you have a add to that?
I would just add that you had to finish all your food when you left the cafeteria. I had a classmate, I won't mention his name, but he did not like what was being served, so he put it in his pockets.
While you're on the topic of school lunch, on December 19th, we're having a school lunch night before the boys basketball game that the community's going to be invited to. So we're taking a poll on what was your favorite lunch that was served here? Joyce?
Probably the pizza burgers.
Yep.
Okay, just come on down one at a time.
Oh, okay. I liked everything. Oh, yeah. Something that was. It was all.
The difference is too.
Larry?
I don't know if I had a favorite.
I was at 4:35 o'clock in the morning. I didn't have no breakfast in my bag. So around noontime, we'd eat whatever. Mrs. House get the bacon.
I guess mine was chop suey, and everything else was good.
I loved everything. I don't think I had a favorite. If all the food was good. I liked it.
Elle, did you have a favorite lunch?
Did I have one? I had
favorite
one
lunch.
that was served to me. My favorite was liver and onions. They had it once in a while.
That was real. What did you graduate?
Liver?
62. Okay. A little before I was 67.
Before they're done today, like in the next half hour, we do want to hear about the proms in the auditorium, because
Okay.
the auditorium is long gone.
Harry and Robbie, you said you liked everything. Don't you remember creamed eggs on toast with asparagus for a vegetable?
Yeah.
Maybe I skipped that day.
Charlie, he didn't like it, huh?
Yeah.
That's good.
Chip even.
That was in season.
That's
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That was all right from, yeah, either Ashburn or over here, maybe.
I was the class of 56, and we were planning for our prom. All the way up until 1956, the prom was held in the auditorium. We could not hold our prom in the auditorium. You know why? Because there was, and we had to have it in the gym, because there's more cubic feet in the gym than there is in the auditorium. Now you tell me how you can dance, more people dancing on cubic feet than you can the feet of the dimension of the auditorium. But we lost, we had to have our prom in the gym, and I think all classes after that had their prom in the gym. No?
There's in the auditorium.
We did too.
They must have found out then that you needed more room to dance.
Well, that,
Okay, now that we're on prom, we can also add homecoming to that. Let's start down here with Margaret and Laverne, and you can tell us if you have any memories of prom and or homecoming.
Well, we had our prom in the auditorium, and the name of it was Moonlight and Roses, and we had Tom Templeton's orchestra, which at that time was a very popular orchestra in the state, and I remember it cost $150. Most after that, they mostly used on the records. And I don't know how many thousand roses we made, because we made our roses out of crepe paper, and we had cut a piece to start with, and then we put the petals around it, and so we were back in the room and back in the auditorium, all of our spare time making thousands of roses. That was wonderful. And of course, Sevastopol always had the big wall that we hung up that went around and had all the little, I think.
Reflectors on it.
Maybe your department made that wall at one time. That's what I had heard. And we used to rent it out to people, or the school used to. It was beautiful. It went around and made all the lights all over the floor. So that was a fun time.
Laverne?
I got a different little story to tell.
Okay, go ahead.
Just to show how times have changed, when I graduated from 8th grade, we went on a trip to Green Bay. We took one of the buses from Sevastopol, and we went to the bakery, and we all got a loaf of bread. And we thought, boy, we really have something. My grandson graduated from Sturgeon Bay from 8th grade. They went to Washington, D.C. So, just to show how times have changed.
Do you have a prom or homecoming or sock hop story?
Not really.
Evan, do you have one? No?
Didn't go to any of it.
You didn't do it? Okay.
Didn't participate, didn't go to the dances or anything.
Marlene, do you have a prom or homecoming or sock hop story you'd like to share?
Well, other than what I mentioned about having the prom in the gym, I think I enjoyed every one of them that I went to. I didn't go to all of them, but I think they were really nice, and it was a very good social time for everybody. Everybody mixed.
Okay.
Well, we had, the theme was Blue Hawaii, and they made palm trees, and they had a fake waterfall with a light on it, and they hung the crepe paper, and I don't know how they ever did it, and they twists in it from the ceiling down to the edge of each of the walls in the auditorium, and there was a prom king and queen, and it was great. But the other thing I want to say is that Mr. Waterstreet was the Phi Ed teacher, and he taught the basics of push-ups and sit-ups and climbing the rope, which you could never do. And also that he taught dancing. And one teacher that I remember chaperoned the dance. I guess we had it just about every Friday night or whatever. And was Gene Jacobs and his wife. They could glide along the floor so nice. That's one thing that I remember about dances at Sevastopol.
It's almost hard to picture a football coach and wrestling coach being a dancer. But I can picture Gene doing that. He was the head football coach when I started, when I was his assistant.
And he was, I still see him today, and I kind of remind him of that. Him and his dad would dance in the floor in the gym at Sevastopol.
Larry, you have a sock hop or prom or homecoming story?
I don't have any particular stories, other than the fact that we had a lot of activities at dances and things. There was not only the prom and the homecoming and the sweetheart dance and all the other activities, but there were other dances that were organized, different facilities. When we had the first big gym was built out here in 65, we even had some popular groups come and perform in the gym at that time. So there were a lot of activities that you could always take part in, and it was surprising. It was only 9 months of school. There was always something going on.
Rob or Joyce,
Sure.
you have something to add?
Well, the auditorium, when we got to high school here, because of the additions that they were putting on in 65, we lost rooms, so the auditorium was used. We did have the dances up there, but it was used as a study hall and a library right behind it. So we had to move a lot of stuff around to get proms up there. And then they did do the homecomings downstairs in the old gymnasium for all of our homecomings. We didn't use the big one upstairs at all. And as a study hall, it was interesting because it had a stage up there, and you always had the study hall monitors watching all the studious students studying. And several of them would, every once in a while, one of them would sneak up on the stage and be peeking out behind the curtains all the time, and the study hall monitor could never figure out what the heck was going on. Why is everybody laughing? So they're all looking over there. So they go, they could be over this side. So if you wanted to study during study hall certain days, you should have just not really worked real hard at it until we got a real study hall where you could monitor, because there was just a lot of confusion going on. Even in our 6th grade, we had to use the small gym as a classroom when they were adding a few rooms. I think Tom Delvin went to that, in that gymnasium that we had for the school in the 6th grade. So expanding the school was fantastic. We had a lot of kids packed in these little places.
Joyce?
I thought it was interesting because, like, after basketball games, we would have dances after basketball games. And our prom, like Robbie said, was up in our auditorium. And FFA and FHA sweetheart dance was down in the lunchroom. That's where that always took place. I was fortunate to be the sweetheart for the FFA and FHA that year. So, but we always had, they always tried to get entertainment for the students to keep us occupied, I think.
Anybody else in the audience have questions or additions here?
Gloria did, she had her hand up. Come on, Gloria.
Well, I was just going to say about the lunch things. I guess I got away with a little bit more. I didn't like salmon, so I wrapped it in my napkin and went past Mrs. Ashton, and when I put it in the garbage, and it went clunk. And she gave me kind of a look like, you know, did you throw that away? But she didn't get mad at me or anything.
Well, I mentioned that I started here in 1971, and I just want to tell a short story about how things happen so unexpectedly and have such remarkable results. My best friend in high school, Steve, asked me one day, we were both in college, nearing the end of our college careers. He asked me to go up into northern Michigan with him because his aunt had died and he was clearing out the house. And I said, I'll go on one condition, that we can go back to Michigan State University to the placement bureau. That's, of course, the days before the internet and everything. And I was getting kind of desperate. It's getting kind of late in the summer and I don't have a teaching job, and I didn't want to work on the trailer factory in town. So Steve and I went up there, we cleaned out his aunt's place, and then we went over to Michigan State. And we went into the placement bureau, and the lady there was just posting the letter from Carl Schultz advertising this job here at Sevastopol. So I told Steve, I said, I'm not going to send in an application or anything, I'm going to call right away. So I called, and I got Carl, the secretary, put him on the line, and I told him that, you know, this is my background and I'm looking for a job, and he said, sure, come on over. Well, I had no idea where Sevastopol was. I had never been to Door County. And I said, well, how do I get there? And he said, well, take the ferry across and come on up. So I interviewed with him, and then I interviewed with John Bob, the principal, and I interviewed with Gene Waterstreet, the athletic director and coach, and so forth. And then we all got together and talked, and I'm starting to feel pretty good about this because I've been turned down, I don't know, 40 or 50 times. When I was in college, so many guys had gone to school to become teachers because the war in Vietnam was going on, and that's one way they could avoid getting drafted for a few years. In fact, they closed the College of Education at Michigan State my sophomore year because there were just way too many people applying for the College of Education. So before I left, they offered me the job, and of course trying to be Joe Cool. I said, well, I'm going to have to think it over. Well, I was just about jumping through the ceiling with excitement. Here's a job offer. I told Linda, who's now my wife, she was still in school, she was a year behind me, and she says, oh, where is Sevastopol? And I said, well, it's across from Traverse City, Michigan. She always wanted to go up there because of her involvement in music, and that's an area that's pretty well known for music. And I said, well, it's across 90 miles of Lake Michigan. And she wasn't real excited about coming up here at first because there was no job for her. She was in journalism. But I did apply for other jobs, thinking, well, we'll go back to Michigan and find someplace closer to where Linda could get involved in music and so forth. And I'm so glad we weren't able to do that. That was the best 35 years of my life, was being here at Sevastopol. Several of you mentioned the family atmosphere, and it really, the community really is a family up here. It's pretty remarkable. I don't think there's very many places like this. Well, I want to thank all of you. We're just about out of time here. We were supposed to be done at 2 o'clock, I believe.
We have a little more time.
Okay, so if anybody has anything else they want to add.
What we'll tell them is, we have a little more time for stories. If you want to leave before the kids come out, you want to get out of here by 2:30, but you're welcome to stay as long as you want to. Right. So if you have, anybody have any last stories?
Snacks in the back.
Snacks in the back.
Yeah, there's snacks back there, coffee and water, and I'm not sure what all, plus there's some desserts over there, so please stick around and help yourself.
Snacks.
Yes. I have a story about Mr. Schultz. He taught me a lesson. I had graduated, and we were going on our class trip the next day. There was a dance at the school. He had his rules, and I'm so thankful that he did. Because once he got into the dance, you were not to leave. So I must have left. My nephew, who was 8 months younger than me, I guess, when I figured it out, was Gary. And I'm 18 years old, and I bought the beer. It was only a handy pack of beer, but I still bought the beer. And Mr. Schultz comes out, and there was some of our friends from Sturgeon Bay, and we were all standing around the car. And Mr. Schultz said, Gary, do you have beer in this car? Gary said, no. He said, what's that down by your feet? He said, give me that beer. Gary's friend in the back, Gary handed Mr. Schultz the beer, and the friend in the back said, oh no, he grabbed it and he said, no, that's Gary's dad beer. And I said, no, Mr. Schultz, you take that beer. He said, everybody down to the cop station. Well, we didn't have to go, but we had up here before him in the office before we left on the class trip. The other thing I want to say that Mr. Schultz was such a knowledgeable man. He's all read the story probably in the Pulse when it was issued about him, and all his accomplishments and so on and so forth. But one thing that stuck out in my mind was his wife that he got. And she told the story that the first date that they had, she came with a corsage. He came with a corsage of some vegetables in it. And I'm going to call him and remind myself of Mr. Schultz all the time because he was the man of the soil.
Snacks in the back. We have a 100-year anniversary committee. Today, Linda Kino is here, Marcia Lynn, Jim Adams, Mike Madden, Stephen Tuhalski, Mr. Lutke. If you'd like to join that committee, talk to one of us. We're always looking for some additional people to have more ideas about future programs. I had one today that we should have a program about teaching kids now versus back when, teaching now. On the 19th of December, we're having that school lunch night. Watch for that. In January, we're having a vintage pioneer wear, so get in your closets or your grandparents' closets or wherever and find your wear and wear it to the game. I'm going to add two things. Joyce, by the time I got to school, we didn't have to go to the floor. Maybe we did at home, and then we turn our skirts up. And I'll tell you my Mr. Schultz story. We went to the store, my friend and I, had these big blue gym uniforms, had our candy in our gym uniforms. Mr. Schultz met us, took our candy up to the office, said we could come and get it at the end of the day. It was a Friday. So we go up the end of the day to get the candy. He said, you know what, girls, I'm going in your neighborhood to your parents, to your neighborhoods over the weekend. I'll drop it off at your house. But we never took our candy with us. So see one of us if you'd like to join the committee. It's lots of fun. Thank you all for coming so very much.
I have one more story about the school, going to Sevastopol. Mr. Moran was our history teacher. And if you ever remember the chairs with the one arm, they were in rows too. And this girl came over from St. Peter and Paul, and they were so smart from coming there. And she always put JMJ on the top of her paper. And I never knew what it was. I don't know if anybody out in the audience knew what it was. But it was Jesus, Mary, Joseph. Jesus, Mary, Joseph. And I always thought it was Jesus, Mary, Joseph. So I wasn't very smart out here.
Okay, go ahead, Robbie. But I don't want to miss thanking all of you for being here and taking part in this. This is just wonderful, and I can't wait to see the tape that Steve, our tech director here at Sevastopol, will have that available sometime, and we can all watch this and share it with our family and friends. Thank you very much, everybody.
We talked about how the community was always close, and they were always very, took care of everybody, made sure everybody was okay. And before Mrs. Schultz married Carl, she was teaching. You were teaching, right, home ec or something?
Home ec.
Yeah, okay. And the night that I was born, she always remembered her birthday because she was at our house. And it's just kind of cool how we bring the teachers in that don't know a lot of people. And the community will step up and introduce the various parents. You know. Yeah, so If I see Ruth around, she's, you got a birthday coming up again, she's always reminding me. Yeah, but it was really cool, and you get to know the teachers and the students, you knew them personally, you didn't just know them as a teacher, you knew the whole family, and everybody got involved in the whole community, starting with the small schools until they went to a big school, but it wasn't that big, it still remained small.
That reminds me of another very quick Carl Schultz story, calling people Mr. and Mrs., etc. Kathy Sawinski taught junior high English here my first year way back in '71. And to this day, when I run across her, she still calls me Mr. Adams. We did not call each other, at least not if we were in the halls with the kids or whatever, we did not call people Rob or Al or Margaret or whatever. It was always Mr. or Mrs. is a sign of respect, and I think we all appreciated that. But again, Mrs. Schultz.
I'd like to say one thing. I didn't hold any records, but I want you to know that I certainly held all the records that there are going to proms from 1951 to 1988. I went to the prom.
Were you dancing at the prom? The bigger question is, were you dancing at the prom? Were you and Carl dancing at the prom also with the kids?
Did we dance? We walked around dancing. He wasn't a great dancer.
Again, thank all of you for being here. This is wonderful.